being celebrated tonight, and I suppose this is part of the general South Wales celebration. So I'm greatly honoured to be included in that. As you mentioned, coming from Port Talbot, where Mr. Jenkins first, then Mr. Burton came from, there's very little that gets written about me, I suppose, that doesn't mention Mr. Burton at some point, which I always slightly feel shamefaced about, but also greatly honoured and flattered that might be the case. Having grown up, there's a sort of convergence of things tonight, with Swansea, Talbot, Richard Burton, and myself being able to get this, or be given this. I grew up in Talbot, which has, when you say that Swansea is the second city of Wales, it was actually my first city because I grew up in the shadow of Swansea, the big smoke across the way, where Dylan Thomas came from, and where I, in fact, first became very serious about theatre, and first learned about the power of performance and storytelling on me. I remember when I joined the local youth theatre, the West Morgan Youth Theatre, as you mentioned, where we did all our courses in Swansea, in a wonderful place called Danacoid. And I remember sitting cross-legged in a hall, not even as big as this, watching a run-through of Arthur Miller's The Crucible being done by my youth theatre. I was probably about 13 years old at the time. I don't think I'd ever seen a proper play before. And sitting there watching these young people doing this play, I can remember sitting there and kind of feeling and knowing that my world just changed. My life just changed. And I had the great opportunity to take my daughter to that same room and say, that's where your father was sitting. So Swansea will be forever a magical place for me. But being able to listen tonight to some of the extracts from the diaries and to hear names called out, spoken aloud again, like the cath. I don't know if you know what the cath means, but it was a cinema that the young Richard went to, that was in Port Talbot. And in fact, when I was working on The Passion, because I think I got to speak to every single person who lives in Port Talbot over the 2 years that I was working on it, the stories you heard were amazing. And one gentleman who ended up playing the chief of police in our place on The Passion, as a young boy, he worked at the cath. And it was sort of the most rudimentary cinema you could ever hear of. It was just sort of a room, really, a box where people went to watch these films. And the cath actually means the shit. Which tells you a little bit about the sense of humour of people. But also to hear about Richard mentioning the YMCA, which is on in an area of Taiwan, which has great significance for another Welsh actor from the area as well, because it's the first place that a young Anthony Hopkins ever got a taste for the stage, as he entered in the back of the building one day, covered in baker's flour from his father's bakery, and the theatre company, the young theatre company there were rehearsing something, were missing a young lad. They needed a young lad to be in it, and they saw him at the back and went, you're in. That's how Anthony Hopkins started. And he himself talks about the day that he went up to the house that he knew Richard Burton was in, when Richard, I think, was visiting the area. And young Anthony Hopkins, very nervous, went up to the house because he wanted to meet this great hero of his. Knocked on the door. Burton came to the door, and not only did he say, oh, Tony invited him in and we had a cup of tea, and I'm not entirely sure if Tony can remember a word that was said, because it was just sort of awestruck. But growing up in Port Talbot is an extraordinary thing because of the legends that have come before you. The stories kind of emanate out from Burton. Burton was a great kind of mythologizer himself. There are so many legends and myths about him, and he was a great myth maker. I think he was very aware of that. That was one of his great qualities. But I remember there was pretty much every pub in Port Talbot would say, oh yes, when Richard and Elizabeth came here, this was their pub, this was where they came. And I used to think, well, not every pub could be. Well, actually, yes, every pub. I remember there's people still talk about I think it was in the early 70s when Richard and Elizabeth visited Port Talbot, And, obviously the train wasn't good enough for them. So they landed by helicopter on Aberafon Beach. And Richard got out wearing a fur coat. People still talk about that. But he's an extraordinary, as Matthew said, it's very hard to summarize anything about Richard Burton. So much has been spoken about him, and I've heard his footsteps off in the distance as I've been going through my career, having performed Look Back in Anger, as indeed Matthew has. Playing Henry V, one of the great parts that he played as well. In fact, he was described when he played Henry, and this has always stayed in my mind, when he played Prince Hal. An eminent critic described him as that he brings his cathedral on stage with him, which sort of beautifully describes a certain element of Burton. And right up to recently, the last thing I did on stage was to play Hamlet. I think as you step out to play Hamlet, there are the ghosts of all the other Hamlets kind of swarming around you. And if you can hold your own in amongst them and not get overwhelmed by that, then you're on for a real amazing roller coaster ride. And whatever Burton was saying to begin at the beginning or to the end, there was no one who said those words like him. I'm just going to say one, talking about convergences. As was said earlier, I've played quite a few real people in things. I remember the day after the Oscars, when Frost Nixon had been nominated for Best Film, the next morning was sort of officially the end of the whole Frost Nixon journey, which had taken about 2.5 years probably altogether, between the stage performances and the film and then the kind of hoopla afterwards. And so I remember the next morning, I officially started research on the next part that I was playing, which was to play Brian Clough, the football manager in a film called The Damned United. So I went onto the internet, which is the great modern tool for actors when they're doing their research now, and I put in Brian Clough's name, and the very first thing that came up on YouTube was Brian Clough being interviewed by David Frost. Slightly strange moment as I saw the character I just finished playing. But the most unlikely convergence I've ever come across, and this hopefully draws everything together, was when I played Kenneth Williams, who, for anyone who doesn't know, was a British comedy actor who was part of the Carry On troupe. There was a series of films through the 60s, 70s, 80s, Carry On films that were kind of legendary and iconic in Britain. And Kenneth Williams was one of that troupe of actors who was a very singular actor as well as being a very singular character. And I did a film called Fantabuloso where I played Kenneth Williams. And when I was doing the research on Kenneth Williams, I discovered that as a young man just starting out as a young actor, he found himself in Swansea. He was with the Swansea Repertory Company, the Swansea Grand Theatre, and he was understudying. And it was the play that he talked about was The Seagull, Chekhov's The Seagull. Another part that I played, Constantine in The Seagull. And the actor that he was understudying in The Seagull at Swansea Grand Theatre was Richard Burton. An unlikelier pair. Richard Burton, understudied by Kenneth Williams. Chekhov's The Seagull. The story goes that one day, young Kenneth Williams was mincing into the theatre. And the stage doorman, we'll call him Di for tonight, Di said to him, "Kenneth, Richard's off, he's got a cold, you're on." And Kenneth, who hadn't learned the words, "No, I don't know the words. Where is he? Where is he?" And Richard's in his dressing room, you better go and have a word. So Kenneth was running upstairs. Richard Burton's dressing room, knocks on the door, and there's Burton, head over a, balsam in a bowl, steaming water, a towel over his head. And Kenneth said, "What's wrong with you? What are you really not on?" But I can't do it. I'm terrible if you're awful. And Kenneth said, no, you've got one. I don't know the words. I haven't heard the words. And William said, no. So Williams goes running downstairs, and right next door to the theatre is the pub, the local pub. So Kenneth got pretty much every bit of alcohol that they had lined up along the bar, went back and said to Richard, I'll give you all my money for the week if you go on stage. And Richard said, no. And he said, all right, well, come down to the pub with me. So he brought Richard Burton down to the pub, made him drink everything that was there. Richard said, I can do it. He went on and did it. Now, whether that is a true story or not, but it says a lot about Kenneth Williams, it says a lot about Richard Burton. And fortunately, it mentions Swansea as well, so that brings it all together.